switch the screen so I can keep track of what I'm doing and where I am on the screen.
Okay, you're
Okay, yeah, that's
in the
not
middle
bad.
and recording.
Okay, so here we are. And so what we're going to do today is start out with some of O Sensei's words again, just maybe about 10 minutes worth, and then we'll start to move. And then we have a Tai Chi lesson. We're actually progressing with that pretty well. So I'm going to put my disguise on, okay? And very scientific method. We just open the book and trust that what comes up is important. Okay. Let's see. Right. And this is again from The Heart of Aikido, which is a collection of lectures that were transcribed. And it was not for an Aikido audience, it was for a church audience. So it's a little more spiritual. He kind of hones in on that a little bit more, okay? And so I'm just going to read. A human being is born into this world from the womb, has many different experiences in life, and builds on those experiences to advance little by little. Think of all of your daily acts as a kind of prayer. Think of all your daily, okay, the world itself is one big prayer, a manifestation of the divine spirit. So right there, you can tell he's speaking probably to a very different audience than just an Aikido audience, okay? The four seasons are part and parcel of our being, and our breath links us to all of heaven and earth, okay? I have had several profound mystical experiences in my life, events that transformed me. Following those experiences, I felt that I could execute unlimited techniques and move freely without obstruction. I was full of vital power. However, those experiences were so overwhelming that I fell deathly ill for almost a year. Okay, so that's probably several instances because he did spend parts of more than one, very, very, very sick. Apparently from a very young age, he suffered from liver and stomach problems. And his son actually puts in his biography of his father that when O Sensei was in Tokyo, you know, with Deguchi's blessing, you're not just my disciple, you are going to introduce the true sense of martial arts to the world. He went to Tokyo. Apparently he was ill and he went back to southern Japan, which is, you know, his native area. But then there was so much pressure for him to return, he returned to Tokyo. And according to his son, he made kind of a sacrifice because, you know, the fact was, you know, he was probably getting better living in southern Japan than he was living in Tokyo and teaching. So let's continue on. Even though I was terribly ill, I had many public duties that I could not shirk. I had an official position in the government and instructed at several military academies. The training at those academies was purely technical, focusing on the means of victory in battle. The guiding principle was killing the enemy with one blow. So, unfortunately, very few of those military men truly understood the concepts of loyalty and sincerity. Of course, there were some noble and brave officers who made great sacrifices for their country. However, the purpose of Aikido is to avoid killing another human being at all costs. It is never to be used for fighting and contention. Aikido is always concerned with the spiritual side of things, not the material. So there are two words, kon and haku. Kon is, there are many words for this, but it's spirit. Haku is a material. And so kon no Budo is the spiritual aspect of Budo or martial arts, and Haku no Budo is kind of the more material, just the technical, physical things. And he constantly stressed that the kon element, the spiritual side, had to take precedent over the material, the Haku side. And there's an expression, reppaku. And, Tojima sensei used to say reppaku no kiai. Okay, and reppaku is kon haku with different readings for those characters. In fact, I didn't know that, and so I asked Tojima sensei once about reppaku, and he said it's kon haku. Then I actually found references to it in the readings, okay? But the sense of the reppaku, kiai, right? You have the spiritual and you have the physical. They're separate. The reppaku no kiai is like a sword cut. What the sword cut does, it actually cuts away the separation. So what is spiritual and physical, and there's this division, bang! The kiai is like a sword cut. It doesn't destroy either half, it cuts away the separation. So Aikido has a physical aspect to it. And Sensei said there's a spiritual side to it, which he said in some sense sort of takes precedent over or guides the physical aspect. Okay, and let's go on. Aikido is meant to bring out the best in people, to lead us along the proper path. Its basis is love. In other words, in the physical martial art, Haku no Budo, the way that he put it, not here, but he said, if you're just into Haku, everything becomes very severe. Okay? The kun element adds something. And really, it's both, because it's not just spirit as something abstract, it's spirit that is directly experienced through your physical being as well. So it's uniting the worlds. Reppaku, kon haku. The purpose of Aikido is to help us fulfill our mission to bring peace and harmony to this world. That is why there are no competitive matches in Aikido, no contests. We attack with the power of love, and we wield the weapons of harmony and peace. We bind our opponents with the power of love. We purge our opponents of aggression. And at some point, he's talking about an opponent, but really what he really is talking about is Ogatsu. It's victory over self, because we create, the degree to which we create conflict in ourselves, so it's also created out there. And so one of the things about it, if everything, the basis of everything is love, okay, then there is activity. But if everything's a basis of love, love is the basis of everything, then conflict becomes something that we find in ourselves, I. And so as we go a little bit more from I towards self, then what happens is we understand the underlying of everything, not just the idea of it, but the underlying of it. The reality of it is love, therefore contention within that paradigm. To some degree, the more we realize that would cease to exist, the forms of Aikido. In other words, we practice attacking forms, but we do so that we can sort of purify the attack, right? And that doesn't mean sometimes love can't be very direct. Boom, that Reppaku no Kiai is that which cuts away the separation. That was Hikizuchi sensei, I used to, he summoned me and I would run in there and he would, that was one of the things that I remember. I mean, the body, the spirit still remember that. Okay? Aikido is liberation of the spirit. It allows us to cut through the things that bind us, to help us eliminate evil thoughts. It clears the path for us. The secret of my Budo, the secret of my martial arts, is to wield a powerful sword that cuts right to the heart of existence. By seizing my opponent's thoughts, I can then guide them along a path that will lead to true happiness. Aikido transcends the boundaries of time and space. It encompasses all aspects of existence. So those are pretty big statements right here. So there is a lot of that is generally put out in his speeches, his lectures, but this is for a different group. This is not for a dojo. This is for a religious gathering. And so for that, you can see he's stressing right here the spiritual side of it. But again, kon haku rep paku. To really be able to cut away the separation so that in the material, spirit is present. Likewise, the spiritual not being just an abstract sense of something, but there's a union of the two. And so with that, okay, and I'm checking the time. So we're about where we are. Let's switch camera angles here. And we will yes, that should, yeah, that's better. That'll be better for full body view. I can't wander too far. And I think on Wednesday we worked a little bit of the Boken. And I have some old videos stored on my computer that I opened last night. And one of them was a video shot at UC Santa Cruz in their martial arts facility, May of 1979. And Tojima sensei was teaching a class just purely on the suburi, or the cut with the boken. See, we tend to think of things as striking, but really, symbolically, this is a sword, and it's very different when we think of it as a cutting motion, as opposed to hitting, striking motion. Okay? In fact, if you really look at what we were talking about, if the real thing is boom, you cut through, you actually cut through barriers. The A and the B have this border or barrier, but you cut through that and unite. Okay? Make one. So one of the things so I recommend, if you have it, and watching, for example, I got a lamp up there. I don't want to smash it. Okay, so I'll warm up. Toes, heels together. And this was interesting. In other words, follow the tip. Goes over the head. This is more warm up. Hi. Okay. Okay. All right there. I'm bunking my tailbone, but it just see if I'm too tense, I can't do that. I have to let go, but I don't want to drop this. Some functional form. Wrists are flexible. All right. Now, what we're going to do right there is go boom. Okay? And we don't want that to wander. Right. So follow the tip all the way up and back, boom, and then boom. Right hand leads, left hand is here. If you swing with the right hand, see how everything is out there. Right hand just guides. And we're exaggerating both the raise and the cut. Okay? And you don't want this to wander, so you want. And what I thought was interesting was how much Tojima sensei really stressed following that. Following that. Boom. Following that. Boom. Okay? So that's a warm up. And just the ability to not wander all over, but okay. And he did several cuts, but the one that I associate with him was that cut. Okay, and several things there that were kind of interesting. Follow the cut up. Most of the time, everybody's obsessed with the strike or the hit, but it's not a hit; it's a cutting motion. Boom. Okay. And so what I thought was kind of ingenious, because in some sense, what happens, there's so much I have to get there, I have to cut. Okay? That he was just saying, fool the I. The I follows that, and then there's a cut. I follows that, boom. So I'd like you to kind of just experiment with a bit. See, if the I follows the cut, or the raise part of the cut, boom, the down is just the down. And right at the very end, instead of putting a lot of weight into it, there's a natural closing motion. But, whoops, I gotta watch that. Instead of closing to stop the sword, It's almost like, again, what image we use, safe on a chain, the safe drops, when it hits the bottom of the chain, boom. Okay? And the image we used earlier was if you're sitting on that safe and that safe drops, you're going to feel everything go up. Okay? So that's another way of explaining it. Okay? Now, on this particular one, the eye follows, the tip goes. I go right about where the third eye is. If you're just like this, nothing much is going to happen. And if you're, but if you, the eye follows the tip, boom. The eye follows the boom. And, okay. So see if you can try that a little bit. In other words, what you're really doing is fooling the eye. Eye follows that boom. Eye follows that boom. Boom. So all of a sudden, that drop just happens without the eye following or tracking it. And at the very end of it, there's that natural sense right here. Boom. It's not something you do, it's just something right here. Boom. Okay? The feeling of it a little bit is sometimes you see on various things where somebody's in an airplane and all of a sudden the door opens and people start flying out of the plane. So they grab onto something so they don't get pulled out. Okay, so right here, boom. And see, the thing is, there's still that pull. That pull doesn't stop, but if all of a sudden you grab, boom, you catch something, you're not pulled out that way. And boom. So if you can, several things like that. So in other words, all of a sudden, something opens up. All of a sudden, there's a singularity of pull. Boom. But the eye follows the tip, boom. Eye follows the tip, boom. Eye follows the tip, boom. So you want to get the eye out of it. Okay, so I thought it was interesting when Tojima sensei indicated follow, boom. Because the eye in the cut produces weight. Okay, but boom. Relax, boom. Relax, singularity. Relax, pull. Boom. So try that a couple of times and see whether or not just that motion. Bonnie, can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, yeah. One of the things about this is that, see, I don't want to try to rush the cut. This is not really about speed. Although one of the things Tojima sensei addressed a lot was speed in the cut. Okay, but see, one of the things right there, the eye is tracking that motion there. And so can we fool the eye by going this way, boom. All of a sudden the safe drops. Yeah, that, okay, good. Try it again. And then all of a sudden the safe drops, okay? Okay, now there's still a little bit. If you can watch me, you're still tracking that. Eye tracks. Eye is following that, boom. Boom. And see if you can, boom. Now, what I want you to do is take your sword, drop it, and catch it. Release it and catch it. Release it and catch it, okay? Now, you're following here, all of a sudden you drop your sword and you catch it. On the way up, so actually raise it and then drop it and catch it. Yeah, okay, without putting the weight of your shoulders into it. This is very much just like boom, 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 boom. See, we're fooling the eye. David, when you're doing it, okay, let the eye track this, boom, the cut. Good. Okay. Now, David, you still have a little bit of the bounce right there. Boom. Okay. If you're in a spy movie and all of a sudden the door opens up on the plane and you're pulled out and you grab something so you're not there, the pull is consistent. You're not going to go this way and that way. There's still that pull. But the cut, see, right here, when you cut, boom, the singularity doesn't stop. Boom. Boom. But we get so caught up in, I do the cut, and we emphasize the down, so we don't want to be going this way. Okay? Boom. And I don't want to, for now, study the cut. Boom. Now that was what I was picking up from watching the Tojima sensei video the other night. That's better. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now you're still getting kind of that little bounce. See that bounce? Okay. Boom. 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 Okay. When I was watching Tojima sensei, see if I can get there. At the end of his cut, boom, boom. It was that double bounce, but it wasn't like it went up. It went dot, dot, boom, 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 boom. Okay. So that cut. Okay. In some sense, I mean, that was Tojima sensei had this really relaxed down. Boom, boom, boom. Or his Nikkyos were not. There were. So just about everything he did, his Aikido, boom, gonna have that cut in it. Okay, so that was something that when I gave a certain amount of study time to anybody feels like it, we can sit and discuss. Okay, can be about the Tai Chi moves or a little bit of what we talked about earlier. Okay, which is a little different. Our sensei was less into the arcane aspects, and he was just kind of talking about Aikido's purpose. Okay, and sometimes he's going into specific details that are hard to follow because most people, to be honest with you, are lazy. We don't want to work. We want everything kind of given to us, right? So when he talks about breathing in on a square and out in a circle and in fire and out water and whatever it is, then we tend to go, okay. So anybody with a question, or let me see if we get, yeah, we got a couple of people. So anybody with a question, something we talked about earlier or off of what we did today, anybody, or the sword cut? The cut itself is very deceptive. There's a sense where, you know, for example, Tai Chi is done really slowly, okay? And there's a difference a lot of times between what you call flow and a drifty feeling. And so, you know, if I was kind of to ask what I kind of got from Tojima sensei, okay, it was mainly that, you know, there was that sense of that immediate one-pointed focus. And nothing kind of describes his Aikido as much as boom, that cutting motion. And so if I'm kind of going like this, that's good. But then that sense, you know, of boom, boom. See, the Tai Chi movements, there's that motion and there's that motion. There's that motion and there's that motion. And there's that motion and there's that motion. So the actual Tai Chi space has, it's kind of like a koan. How can you move so slowly that when you, it's not that you speed the motion up, it's just that slow space is like, boom, time-lapse photography. Right in front of you, a tree just goes like that. Obviously, a tree is going at its own pace in time, but then we can, with camera work, make the tree seem to appear before our eyes, right? And so that's one of the things about the cut, you know, and certain systems, it's like, oh, you just keep trying to move fast. And really, to understand speeds, you have to sort of understand that. But if you kind of stay there, sometimes you wind up kind of just being in a drifty state. So boom, the ability to, all right? Yesterday, I had to pick some stuff at the dojo, and there are those dummies in the corner. If you've been there, you know them, the jiu-jitsu has them. But they're really useful because if you go into it and you plow into it, they're so weighted that they swing back at you. In fact, if you really hit it hard, and what happens is it may rebound back to you and it hits you very unexpectedly. Okay? And so what I did yesterday is, because sometimes I work the inch punch. the inch punch. Master Choi told me once, he says, I want you to start working on the inch punch. I said, okay. And when I was in Japan, Tojima sensei, he just showed up out of nowhere. We didn't know who he was. He seemed to be friends with Ano sensei, so it seemed that must mean he was cool. But he was real different. See, Anasa sensei didn't say much in those days, okay? And Ano sensei, everything he said was very, very positive. And Tojima sensei would kind of look at you, and whatever you were kind of off, you'd find out about it very quickly. But he could make that very entertaining. So you could laugh at what you were doing. It was actually kind of a great teaching tool that he had. And so, you know, he found out that I did some karate. So what he said was, hit me right here as hard as you can. So, you know, I'm just kind of, I'd done Shotokan, so I went in and did a form punch. And then he said, yeah, come on, like you really mean it. So whatever that means. So I went and hauled off. They just bounced off of both times. And I thought, well, that's pretty impressive. And then he looked at me and said, my turn. And I went, I'm going to die. I just know it. And so what he did is he didn't really haul off and hit me. He just went like this, about an inch away, and boom. And I went flying. I just, you know, just uprooted me. And so he wound up, you know, and so that was so amazing, right? So I just said, well, I'd like to see it again. And so this time I kind of really hunkered down, you know, really got a base, so to speak. And he went like this, went boom, I went flying again. And so in Linda Holliday Sensei's book, he kept punching me across the room. I don't remember it that way so much, although, you know, I mean, now that it's written, that's the way it'll be remembered for eternity, right? But that, it was just those two for me. Now, maybe I was dense enough and dumb enough that he had to keep punching across the room. If so, I have deleted that from my memory, so whatever. But there was an area where, for example, that cut appears like it's really hard, but boom, boom. And so yesterday, I went into the dojo and I turned one of the dummies around, and I was just testing, you know, the Tai Chi pushing motion. Because with two hands, you go like that. It's so weighted, it swings back right in your face. And so I said, let me just see what happens. So I positioned it and I went boom, and I got it all the way over. Boom, it just flopped down. Now I can do that with an inch punch, which I tried yesterday, and I actually can still do it. But then I thought, you know, what I'm going to do, and I'm not there every day. If I got to go pick up something, I get to get some office stuff yesterday. And so I said, you know, like, for example, a press forward motion. Boom. I think all the Tai Chi movements that appear to be very slow, they have that sort of, see, it's not heavy force. When Tojima sensei hit me, it was very light. I just couldn't understand how I kept flying. But you know, when I look at his shortcut, it looks like it's boom, it's really hard, but it's not. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? And so that was just something that I thought I'd share a little bit, because the movements kind of can get very dreamy. And that's part of the fun of them. Okay? I used to do I remember my real first exposure to Tai Chi was at Merrill College in spring, beginning of spring quarter 1970. And one of the Aikido students was a Tai Chi teacher, a man named Steve. And it was something called the spring thing. And so everybody was out in the quad, and Robert Frazier had the Aikido club come out, and we did a little bit of movement, and we kind of formed a ring, and we did a thing with the hands. And so everybody was kind of feeling energy moving. But Steve, instead of joining us as as an Aikidoist, which he was a member of the club, he put on his Tai Chi outfit, and he brought his Tai Chi sword out, and he was just doing the Tai Chi movements with the sword really slow. And I was fascinated. And so, he was starting a class because Master Choi had certified him. And so I signed up for the course. And that was my first exposure to Tai Chi. It was spring of 1970. So this is actually kind of my 50th year in Tai Chi. It was something about how slow the movements were. But you could kind of feel, boom. It's not that you want to be deadly, but there was something about my particular mindset at that time. It was kind of like boom, boom. That this sort of very harmless motion, boom, was a very deceptive motion. Okay. And I've always been kind of fascinated by things that look outwardly one way, but if you go inside them, there's no lie to what they are on the outside, but there's something inside which is kind of a little bit more less obvious or mysterious. And so that's the way the Tai Chi struck me. Like what would happen is actually of all the only one of the major teachers in Shingu who didn't actually ask me to show him Tai Chi was Hikizuchi sensei. And he was like bad-mouthing Tai Chi all the time because he thought Aikido was it and that I should just stick to the Aikido. But, I remember showing Tojima sensei the movement we did today, boom, the needle to sea bottom, and he cracked up. Boom, he kind of saw the martial application of it like that. And what was really interesting was that all of them, like I remember doing, there's a partner stuff, which we can do when the dojo starts up again. We can actually do Tai Chi with social distancing, but we can't do the partner stuff, the joint hands. But I did joint hands with all of them, Ano, Tojima, Yanase. They were really fascinated by it, right? In fact, I was showing Tojima sensei the joint hands movements, and he looked at me, and he used the term katsu hayahi, which is, he could see the applications of it because it's never done fast, but boom, their speed there's an underlying thing. And so I've always been fascinated how you can, something that looks so this way has a dimension to it that's not obvious. So within that, it was just kind of, I don't know. So when you're doing the sword cut, see, Tojima sensei went like this. He didn't go fast. He went boom, and I just went like that. And I couldn't figure out what it was because even when I knew it was going to come, he went boom, and I went So I figured, there's something to that punch. So, I kind of, Master Choi told me out of nowhere, he says, you should learn how to do the inch punch. And so, it wasn't, it was like I said, so, I kept on trying to do it like that. And then, in Tojima sensei, he let me know that boom, there's a different type of power than force. Boom. And that's what the Tai Chi potential he has. As, so the cut itself, not, see, if I'm this way, I get the feel of it, but there's that. And so I kind of use the analogy, you occupy, the eye looks at the cut going up, and then it doesn't interfere with boom, boom. And Tojima sensei's movements were good. He had that cut in almost every move he did. Like I used to ask him after class to do Nikkyo. Just because everybody else, I mean, it was strong. But Tojima sensei was almost like when he hit you with a Nikkyo, it was like he was hitting you with a velvet hammer. It was very, very compelling, but it didn't hurt. Boom! It was like that shortcut. Boom, 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 boom. And we threw you, boom, we threw you, boom. There was always that feeling of the cut in his movement. So, I looked at that video last night, and and the thing that I took away from it was that thing where he's saying, relax, look at the tip. And you're fooling the eye, because the eye wants to do that. You go this way, boom. And the eye doesn't get in the way of boom. So I just thought that was, I don't think he would have phrased it that way, but I could see pretty much that's what he was doing with the cut. And then, boom, boom, boom. And then it leads you to a place of one-pointed focus. See, the Tai Chi, all these movements, both Master Choi and Tojima sensei were very different because they're different arts, but they had that feeling of one-pointed focus. And that sense of one-pointed focus is very peaceful. It has nothing to do with like force or speed. It's just boom. It's one-pointed focus. So that motion, boom, or bah, one-pointed focus, boom. So when I went in and I worked with that dummy, because if you just push it, it comes back at you. And I went, wow, because I'd never done that before. I'd done the inch punch with it, but I'd never done the Tai Chi push with it. Okay, anybody with a question or anything we've covered recently? David, anything?
I'm just thinking about the fact that you have to have the basic physical mechanics correct before any of the rest of this seems to be available. But if you just think about the mechanics, then you don't get it.
No, actually, that's the kind of what you call everything is double-edged. So with most people, when they get the mechanics, they stay mechanical with it. So the trick is that you have the mechanics, but I almost think that, like somebody like Tojima sensei, for example, he kind of stumbled into it. And once he stumbled into it, he was smart enough not to interfere with it. Because if you get everything presented too linearly, you stay linear. Every single person on the screen I am looking at is not a linear thinker. There are no linear thinkers on the screen I'm staring at. If you are here, you are not a linear thinker. And I mean that as a compliment. And I remember, watching Tojima sensei sometimes, and he would look at something and you go, what's going on? Well, he just saw something from a different angle. He was always doing that. He'd look and go, huh? Like he was just looking at something and he would be seeing it from a totally different angle. I remember one time, Linda Holliday and I, this was after class. We used to work a lot after class, okay? And so we had done this here in Northern California, which is you do blindfold technique. So we didn't have blindfolds, but we were training with our eyes closed, nage, eyes closed. And guess who was there? Really looking at things very, very like, was Tojima sensei. And years later, you know, he actually came here in 1979. And so there were some photos taken of him. And one of them appeared in a book called It's a Lot Like Dancing, which is kind of the text is written by Terry Dobson sensei. And the photos were done by a lady named Jan, who was a very gifted photographer. And there's a picture of Tojima sensei working with Mr. Korebayashi, who is kind of the uke he brought from Japan. And he's doing techniques with his eyes closed. And I just remember there was another Japanese shihan that came through, and he looked at that and said, "What's this guy doing?" Because, you know, it was funny, you know, because I kind of, you know, this guy was looking through this photo book of Aikido. So I kind of said, this is Tojima Shihan from the Kumano-juku dojo, right? And this guy was a Shihan and somewhat territorial. So he kind of said, what's this guy doing? But it was totally obvious to me because he was reading Mr. Korebayashi's movements with his eyes closed, energy to energy. And that was to another Japanese shihan, especially from Japan, totally incomprehensible. It was really funny. I said, you know, because, you know, he kind of meant that in a not complimentary way, but it really said more about him than it did about Tojima sensei. And I just remember that time when Linda Holiday and I were just training with our eyes closed. And then he took that and he developed that. So, you know, that it's a strength. A lot of times you have to get the basics, but we all have to be more like Tojima sensei, which all of a sudden we see them from a different angle. And after a while, we see ourselves from different angles, which is very useful because then the eye is most treacherous when it's there on a subconscious level. It's when we're conscious of I. So we can be freer, I to self. And so I always thought Tojima sensei was just this guy who, you know, he could do things and figure things out. Nobody else could. He was a little bit like Albert Einstein that way. And he never graduated high school. He was a factory worker for most of his life, along with Ano sensei. They were both factory workers in southern Japan. And they're two of the brightest guys. I mean, I went to graduate school and put up with all the politics by all the PhDs and everything. And I can tell you that those two guys were a lot sharper than the professors. Okay, there are two professors that I really learned a lot from. One was Robert Fraser sensei, and the other one was a man named Charles Tart, who was the Aikido club faculty. He presided over you had to have a faculty sponsor to have a club. And so we had an Aikido club, and Charles Tart was a psychology professor who taught the psychology of altered states of consciousness. He trained in the class. So those are the two professors that I felt I really learned something from. And you know, the other professors were all people that handed out tests and grades, but those two are the only educational PhDs I felt that resonated with me. And these two factory workers from southern Japan, why? Because Sensei was in their life. They were touched by him. And he encouraged them to explore themselves at a level which was much deeper. I found, for example, than, you know, a lot of people can have a lot of degrees or whatever, you know, that you can know a lot and miss it. You can miss yourself. So anybody else with another question? Or David's observation, by the way, was quite good. You have to have the basics down, but you also have to be able to look at those basics from different angles constantly. Aikido said the universe is unlimited transformation, as are we. And so those basics are meant to be constantly unveiling different aspects, which we have to somehow be attuned to. In other words, the eye, as you see something in a movement that you've never seen before, that's not the same level of you. So that's one of the ways of charting the eye. And Tojima sensei was somebody like that. So, you know, he had the inch punch and he had the cut. And he also, you know, had this incredible sense of humor. In the Castaneda Don Juan books and the early books, there's a man called Don Genaro who goes up a waterfall, things like that. And Don Juan tells Carlos, I'm your teacher for what's called the tonal. That's how you navigate this world. I'm teaching you to be a warrior. Don Hinato was teaching you about the nahual, which is kind of this immensity. In other words, you have to sort of be a warrior to handle the nahual. And so our nickname for Tojima sensei in the old days was Don Hinato, because he would just crack me up during the training when it was very serious. We would actually be training and cracking each other up. It was really fun, you know? And in a lot of ways, I remember he was not initially as highly regarded as the other teachers by the foreigners. You know, Ano sensei had all this beautiful movement. Inasa sensei had, you know, this impeccable technique. And Hikizuchi sensei, you know, he kind of had this field of energy from hanging around O sensei, right? And Tojima sensei would just, to some degree, you know, talk about energy. And, you know, he was, so, you know, everybody that, in fact, you know, when my, at the end of the first year, there were three of us, you know, there was Mary Heine sensei. We had a little conference and said, you know, we actually, each of us bonded with one of the teachers. And Mary said, yeah, well, Hikizuchi sensei, she was really close to him, right? And Linda was really, you know, it still is, you know, it's transcended time. So really close to Ono sensei. And this guy, Dick, who was also there, was really close to Yanase sensei. So they all looked at me and said, I guess that leaves Tojima for you. Which is really interesting, you know. Yeah, I guess, you know. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, they were all really good. And, you know, there wasn't anything about him that really resonated with the other two. But the two of us used to just crack each other up. And we'd be training. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, it wasn't like physical danger, although the movements that he had were very abrupt. Boom, boom. So you kind of had to be there, right? And he'd have my head bouncing off the mat, and we'd be cracking up. I was perfectly okay, you know? The number one Nikkyo, no, not Nikkyo, but Yonkyo I felt, forearm nerve technique. There were a lot of people that could cause a lot of nerve pain. And that was how they measured it. But the best Yonkyo I ever felt was one that Tojima sensei put on. And it was two hands on one. He went over there and he went to Ikkyo and he went and grabbed the forearm for Yonkyo. And everybody kind of thinks of Yonkyo as kind of this heavy pinning thing. But in a very compact motion, it's like his sword cut. He also did the broader cut, but he also went boom, that one pointedness. He got that one point, hardly moved. My feet were in the air. I didn't feel any pain on the Yonkyo. And all of a sudden, the direction of that point changed. I was going face first towards the mat. Boom, the cut, boom. And afterwards, my thought was, I'm in midair with all of my weight on the knuckle of his hand, and he could have snapped my forearm very easily when I was suspended in midair with all the weight on that knuckle. And, to some degree, it was very abrupt, but it was also very, 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 I don't know one better term, it was very loving. And I was going, wow. And there are other teachers that create great pain doing that technique. But that was like Tojima sensei's Nikkyos. They were really very, very powerful, but they didn't quote unquote hurt. There was an intense energy there. And we would crack each other up. In fact, what happened with the Nikkyos, everybody would just be watching, and he would have me, because he did flamenco guitar, he would have me clapping out flamenco rhythms as he was applying the Nikkyo. Everybody else was cracking up when he was doing that. So, that lasted for a while. And then so one time I went up to ask him, and he says, this is starting to bother me. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And what's interesting about it, what he said was, you're starting to pick it up too fast, Jack. In other words, learning is supposed to be somewhat step by step, and he says, you're getting it too fast. And this is causing me a certain amount of trauma. And so he says, in the future, he took a staff and he put it over and said, if you want the conditioning, just kind of do it on yourself with a staff. Because I didn't want the conditioning. I just wanted to be in the feel experience of what he was doing with the energy. You see, I didn't care about making my wrist stronger. It was like that Yonkyo I'm talking about, the Nikkyos, were just unbelievable. He's not hardly thought about it all these days, but he was somebody that was really, really special. And so it's, just kind of finding that old video of him and just kind of going through the cut today. So when you're doing the cut, it's almost like what you're doing, you're relaxing here, and all of a sudden there's a singularity. Boom. And boom. It's not something that, the pull of a singularity would just be the pull of a singularity. And, when he did the Yonkyo, he didn't do anything like this. He just got that, he had the point here, the one point of focus, he had the knuckle in the right position, and he just did a little movement like that. A little movement. Just like he's saying, okay, follow the tip, fool your mind, fool the eye mind. Boom. And that lifted me off my feet. And then came the singularity. And I'll tell you, I still remember that. A really good technique is something that transcends time and space. All right. That was, there were a couple of moments like that. But I mean, basically, we used to train together and we would crack each other up. It was really very difficult to explain that, boom, he'd show you, you were wide open there, or boom, the arm could be broken here. And it was joyous. To some degree, at least at that time, I was a very willing pupil, right? There's this one guy that comes in, he's from this area, and I think I'd been there for probably about 3 or 4 months. And so this guy comes in, he's pretty big, and he's totally not a part of what goes on, right? And he comes in, he grabs my wrist and goes, like that. And my first response was, boom, which is don't deal with a guy's stupidity, deal with him. It wasn't so much you're going to hit him, it's like that was energy moving out. And what happened is interesting, I hardly touched him. And he's on the ground. He doesn't know what to make of it because he grabbed my wrist, and then all of a sudden my fist went out and hit him in the face, and he's on the ground. And he looks up, and it was Tojima sensei's class. And Tojima sensei was ecstatic. Wow. Okay. And I remember there was a guy who will remain nameless, but he was over there. He was a foreigner. He really wasn't into a lot of what was going on. He thought Tojima sensei was not very good at all. He was a guy, Tojima sensei knocked the bokken out of his hand. But after class, this guy was teaching a multiple attack class, which he shouldn't have been doing. It wasn't his dojo. And he's just really picking on me. And so finally, I get really fed up with it. And so he comes in to kind of give me a hard time. I don't really hit him, but I go, wah, and then I pick him up, and then I go, whoa, down. And, what was kind of interesting is I kind of remember, one thing that happened is Linda Holiday sensei. Well, she's in a different culture. It's a very male sexist culture. If you're a woman doing Aikido, even here, you're dealing with that, right? And so she used to beat the crap out of me. Because, she's kind of feeling her own power, right? It was like I didn't kind of feel like, well, Linda, don't do that. You're beating the crap out of me. I didn't feel like I could say that, right? But I'm kind of in this, like this Bruce Lee rage, right? And then Linda comes in right when I'm still in it. And I go. And through all that, there's Tojima sensei in the background in ecstasy. It was really funny. Because I think he probably felt like doing it to that guy, because that guy was a real pain in the butt. People that think they know a lot more than they do and want to teach you and make you do it their way, are a pain in the butt. So anyway, that's probably, anybody with anything before we go? Yeah, Tojima sensei, I still learn from him. It's really interesting that literally, if I look back upon, that phase, he was definitely kind of my Don Hinaro. Okay. Anyway, anybody before we go? Okay. So I'm going to